Iggy Azalea?
She is talking out of turn.
Why shouldn't she love and study hip hop music and make her own version of pop hip hop?
Well, here's the thing with
pop rap. What's wrong with that?
We can do a whole discussion about the history of hip hop and it's not just about music. You have to give back culturally to the hip hop community. And
well, that was then it was appropriate for will.i.am to defend Iggy Azalea by saying, you know, decades ago, a white girl in a punk rock band named Blondie expanded hip hop beyond all the clubs in the Lower East Side of Manhattan and expanded the sound of rap with a song called The Rapture. So thank you, Debbie Harry and Blondie, for giving back to the hip hop community like 40 years ago when you did it then.
And we are talking about Bulg's mother.
What are we talking about?
We all know Bulg's father is Azog.
How busy the Twitterverse has been today.
Well, welcome to Torn Tuesday. This is TheOneRing.net weekly show of all things Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
And all things pop culture under the universe that happens to fall under the blanket of sci-fi, fantasy, and comic book nerddom. We're on that tip.
That's Cliff. I'm Justin.
That's me. That's him.
And today...
Good to see you guys. Welcome our regular crew. Welcome the regular audience who joins us every week, live, coming to you from the heart of geekdom in Los Angeles here at Meltdown Comics.
And we're here live on Ustream. You can see that we've got a chat going on. We've got tweets going on from #OneLastTime, or you can tweet at TheOneRingNet. And, of course, you can call and text us, 530-64-FRODO.
And join the live stream at, is it at Ustream?
Ustream.tv.
Okay.
And there's also an app. And we've got a lot of our regulars. Guess what? The final Hobbit is out, but the final version of The Hobbit is not out.
You are going to throw an incendiary fire into a dry prairie if our account on Ustream is TheOneRingNet, all one word. Is that correct?
It is. TheOneRingNet on all platforms.
We discuss
Facebook.
All things, all caps, right with...
What is he doing?
Dictating a tweet.
No, you're not supposed to dictate a tweet.
I just did.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
Our live show just started. Join the live stream. Tried to do a little bit of a live broadcast, didn't we?
We were inside the Chinese theater, but the signal just wasn't there.
Do you know why? Because we were in a building that was built in the late 10s, early 20s, and it is super reinforced. Here in the U.S., we're treated to early Tuesday preview. At the classic Chinese theater, watching glorious IMAX 3D high frame rate. It was really quite exciting.
And we're getting word that there's actually several theaters around the country that are playing in HFR 2D, so you can watch that smooth computer game-like animation of the whole movie in 2D with HFR, which should be good for a lot of people that just can't handle 3D. You know, I've got my glasses on, and it gets a little annoying, and the 3D sometimes just doesn't look right.
Well, where did you hear? I think it was our friend Harry Knowles at Ain't It Cool News. Did he reveal that Peter Jackson had a preferred method of seeing this?
Yeah, and it's been in several articles. I mean, Peter Jackson has done one-on-one interviews with almost everybody. He's even done podcasts and things like that, where he says, at the end of all things here, a Hobbit, his preferred way of watching The Hobbit is HFR 2D. He gave it the old go-ahead, He was trying to break new ground.
Yes, he did.
With all the digital HFR 3D but he, after all that work and effort, of all people, he should want, what he shot with. But he says that HFR 2D is his preferred format.
His preferred format really ended up being HFR 2D.
Yes. It just feels better.
I heard rumor that many of the premieres, including Brazil, London, and LA, I heard rumors that they were shown
LA was in 3D
as HFR 2D. I heard that many of the premiere events
in Paris. The Paris was the first time.
It was the Paris event that was shown at HFR 2D.
Yes.
Okay, well that's pretty cool. Well,
and how many people have seen it in HFR 2D? Aravandi here in the chat room says that she likes it HFR 2D. I can't wait. I don't know why there's no theaters in Los Angeles with the hundreds and hundreds that we have around. I haven't been able to find
and huge, very well attended, popular theaters, movie theaters here.
So, I wonder. Every time I've seen the movie, I'm seeing it in a different format. I've seen it in IMAX HFR 3D. I've seen it in regular HFR 3D. I've seen it in regular old 2D, our old Vista Theater here in East Hollywood.
That leads me to the next branch of conversation that I wanted to have. You actually saw it at the classic Vista Theater in regular 24 frames per second 2D.
24 frames per second, 2D, digital projection. My next version, if I can't find an HFR 2D, I want to find a film. I want to see the rolling shutter and the gate.
The rolling shutter.
All that stuff.
Do you know that one of Harry Knowles' lead writers is Eric Vespi?
Yes.
He is known online as Quint there on the website Ain't It Cool News.
He looks like a shark.
And you would know Quint, which is a reference to one of the characters from Steven Spielberg's Jaws, one of his favorites. So,
and that's one of the inside jokes of the Jurassic Park trailer. Spielberg's Jaws.
Yes,
gets eaten by the bigger dinosaur.
And here's the scoop. We know Eric Vespi, very close with Peter Jackson, and he's very close with Harry Knowles, which is our connection also as online fan websites. Eric and I had a Twitter conversation, and he said he would like to come on the show and discuss sometime soon the fact that he prefers watching all the Hobbit films with no HFR involved at all. He prefers it straight, 24 frames per second, 2D, and he said this is why. It looks like Lord of the Rings to me when I watch it in that format. He's like, if this cinema universe is going to match up across 6 movies, the answer is to keep their format the same. Isn't that fascinating? So what do you think about that?
Well,
he was on set. He's in The Hobbit as one of the grocers selling a fish to Bilbo in the extended edition of Unexpected Journey.
Well,
you'll see him.
I think we should have him on a show after the new year for a conversation about everything wrong with the Battle of the Five Armies. Because today we're talking about everything right with the Battle of the Five Armies.
Yes,
and Peter Jackson got a lot right with this movie.
He did. I'll agree. Sticking with the subject, this week we'll talk about everything that was right with Battle of the Five Armies.
Now, a little background here. I've come into this Hobbit trilogy as a complete noob. I have never read the books. I barely remember the cartoon watching it as a kid. We never owned the tape or the VHS or anything.
Seriously? You never saw the original 1970s cartoon?
I knew nothing about The Hobbit going into these movies. I didn't know until I started hearing rumors this year that main characters die. So I came in a complete. I knew nothing about it. And coming into Battle of Five Armies, I did not like the first unexpected journey. I thought it was long and bloated, and who wants to watch a 45-minute dinner scene? I can't even deal with spending 45 minutes at my own family's dinner.
So I
don't want to watch that.
You had complaints with the leisurely pace of An Unexpected Journey.
Well, there's many things. If you
and
go
you
back
never
to
saw this. You never saw this.
No, I don't. I remember seeing pictures of the old Bilbo looking like a frog and stuff like that. But I didn't know that was Gollum.
That's Gollum. That's Gollum looking like a frog.
So Desolation of Smaug came out, and I absolutely loved Desolation of Smaug. I thought that was the best use of Peter Jackson at one of his strongest points. It gave us everything that we wanted except closure. It's not without its faults, but I thought that I saw stuff in Desolation that I'd never seen before, and I loved it. And you had the opposite reaction to me.
I had complaints about Desolation of Smaug,
but you loved the first movie.
But the first movie I thought was really charming and got it right as far as the tone of the book. If you're being a book fan like me, coming from the point of view of what is most like Tolkien, what has the greatest fidelity to Tolkien's original, An Unexpected Journey racks up a lot of great points for being truer to Tolkien in many, many respects. Desolation of Smaug went off the deep end as far as being true to Tolkien at all. It went way off the deep end. And at that point, Peter Jackson was admitting in Empire magazine, I'm having a good time with this, deviating from the original. He actually said that.
He said he loved it so much he might get disinvited from our annual Oscar party.
He did say that.
And the final result is, Peter, we're having an Oscar party. It's on Indiegogo right now, and you are definitely invited. You're definitely invited.
You're definitely invited, Peter. You know what? The Desolation of Smaug had so many digressions from the original text. Characters that were, invented, characters that were true to the book and yet displaced into different locations, and lots of new things that happened. We kind of wondered whether the third film would bring it all together in any way that resembled the first film at all. And guess what? This third film, Battle of the Five Armies, although it does have to resolve many of its own story digressions that were started in Desolation.
Which it does successfully.
It does it very successfully. I have to say, what I was complaining about in Desolation with that big cockamamie, crazy action set piece with the golden statue.
I loved it.
And their attempt to douse the dragon with molten gold. I didn't buy it. However, this year, now that I see the third film, Peter Jackson pays everything off beautifully.
Everything you hated was paid off.
And he gives us some very striking, interesting visuals with Thorin standing all by himself in that empty golden floor, which is where the dragon had left the building. When he left the building, Elvis was gone, and so was Smaug. By the way, did you see Smaug's bit with Stephen Colbert?
Yes.
Wasn't that great?
So good.
Wasn't that funny? So good that they did that.
We respect you, Stephen Colbert. Thank you for representing Tolkien fandom on basic cable. We look forward to seeing you on CBS.
Yes, we do.
Taking over from David Letterman.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's going to be very exciting for Mr. Colbert and for all of us. And I got to say, one of the best things about Battle of the Five Armies was the way that they give us a payoff of 2 movies worth of build-up. Lots of build-up with this character. Lots of build-up with Thorin. So much stuff built up with what's happening with Gandalf. A lot of things built up with other characters, and everything finds its own resolution in this film.
Emily in the chat room says that Botfa, Battle of Five Armies, Botfa, is my favorite Hobbit movie, I think. And I think a lot of people said that after their first viewing. A lot of people were saying, this might be my favorite, I think, but let me see it again 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 more times. And so that means people are going back to the cinemas over and over and over again. And I am one of those people around the world. And, Peter Jackson made a point in one of these articles, I think it was in Variety, that he says, hey, look, say what you want about these movies. People are going back to watch it again and again. And there aren't many movies where people are willing to do that. And pay for that.
That's right. There aren't that many movies.
And so no matter what you, if you take away any comparison to Lord of the Rings, this movie is a huge success in all points. It's so good that people are going back to see it over and over again, and it's only in its first week. Christmas is even a few days away.
Do you know what? That there are some Tolkien fans that have sworn off finishing this trilogy, and I have had to tell them. I have told some fans who were so disappointed with Desolation of Smaug that they should not swear off Battle of the Five Armies. They should go and definitely see it, so that they can see this complete story represented the way that it's supposed to be. And it lends a lot to the argument about whether they should have stuck with the 2-film format instead of a 3-film format. There's something to debate.
More Middle-earth is better Middle-earth.
There's always something to debate about that point. But we have the Battle of Dol Guldur in this film.
Well, let's
the battle with Smaug over Lake Town. We have the Battle of the Five Armies itself.
Well, let's go through the movie and just talk about all the things that they did right, starting with the beginning.
Well, we have a lot of people chatting in the room about certain things that are happening. Sheepish Lion. I see your point about...
Jeez, a lot of people talking about Dane.
A lot of people talking about Dane, Ironfoot, and already people are talking about Galadriel's immense demonstration of power in the scene.
Well, we'll
get to that, but Sheepish Lion, thank you for talking in the chat room. I want to address that. Let's start from the beginning.
Let's start from
the
beginning.
How about this? Is this... or is it not the first Middle-earth film without a proper prologue?
No, we jump right in, and I called it.
Isn't that amazing?
I called it several months ago, didn't I not? We're just going to jump right into the action.
Or you could say that the destruction of Lake Town itself is the prologue.
You know, on the last time I watched it, I put a timer on my phone.
Yes.
And the Desolation of Smaug, the time where he actually gets desolated, is actually 10 minutes long. It literally is, boom, 10 minutes. At the 10-minute mark, Smaug is dead. And I thought, wow, they could have put that 10 minutes at the end of Desolation. And
I would have been a lot happier. Last year, I wouldn't have any as much to complain about if they just...
I love the fact that we were just jumping right in. I think that's one of the things that he did right about Battle of Five Armies. Again, we're talking about all things right with Battle of Five Armies. I think it was right to just jump right into the action, get us in the place.
Given the unfortunate editorial choice of last year to not deal with the dragon and resolve that storyline, it was immensely correct to not have some big digression at the beginning of the film, perhaps starting with Dol Guldur or something else. We started right with the very second we left off last year.
And here's why I think
that was a good
choice. Why I think it works. And why I think it was the right decision. Because the Hobbit trilogy is set up already in flashback. At the very beginning of the Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, we're introduced to Frodo and Bilbo, and he's like, let me tell you about a story. So we're already in this world of flashbacks, and I thought it was a little inappropriate to have a flashback in a flashback at the beginning of Desolation. I felt like we're doing a little Inception here. Like, you already have the entire trilogy in a flashback. You should just jump right into the action. And I feel like Battle of Five Armies fulfills on that promise made at the beginning of An Unexpected Journey. That we're on this story.
The entire 6-movie conceit is built around the Red Book of Westmarch.
Yes.
Which is kind of nice. I think that's another thing that the filmmakers have done right. All 6 movies are built around the same conceit that J.R.R. Tolkien had in the books, in that Bilbo and then, subsequently, afterwards, Frodo, are the 2 individuals who are recording their memoirs in the Red Book. Samwise Gamgee will be given the pages that remain at the last of the stories, that he can write the last chapters of his story in the Red Book. That's what Tolkien wanted. That's what it was all about in the book. And it was kind of a beautiful concept to have The Hobbit begin with Bilbo writing out his story in the Red Book. However, the compression of time seems a little bit strange, because in An Unexpected Journey 2 years ago, Bilbo discovers, oh my gosh, it's this morning, today is my birthday, and we're already in the middle of Fellowship storyline. You notice?
At the beginning.
At the beginning, Hobbit 3 movies are a real flashback with Bilbo remembering what happened 60 years ago. Then when you get to Fellowship of the Ring, or, if you want, the very end of Battle of the Five Armies, you're going to go forward in real time without flashbacks for the other Lord of the Rings movies.
And so that's why I feel that it was a good decision to just jump right into the action. Contextually, amongst the whole Hobbit trilogy, each movie should have just jumped right into the action. So I think that was right, and I think that the way the entire Lake Town scene was done right and appropriately, it had good gags, it had good action. We get closure, we get absolute closure on Master of Lake Town. We get absolute closure on the destruction of power. We get absolute closure that there's no way that anybody who needs to die is not dead.
Yes,
and
we also get a situation where we immediately realize that something is wrong with Thorin. Thorin has turned his back and isn't watching the destruction of all these innocent civilians. The other dwarves are alternately shocked. Some of them are weeping. Bilbo doesn't even know what to think, and they're all deeply concerned about, in Balin's words, the poor souls who helped them in Lake Town are now facing the worst destruction and massacre of their lives, and Thorin has turned their back to them already. In that opening,
that's right.
Before we even get to the opening title card where it says Battle of the Five Armies.
I love that.
It's a great opening. It's a great opening, but it felt abbreviated. I feel like the extended edition is going to give us more dragon, more destruction.
It doesn't need that.
What about the bit with the wind lance? Hey, that stuff with the wind lance was built up a lot in Desolation of Smaug, and we don't even revisit the damn thing.
You know, I don't think it was.
You don't think we got a truncated, or shall I say, slightly abbreviated version of an action sequence?
Really? I don't know the legacy. I'm not burdened with the legacy of Tolkien's original text. All I know is what I was shown in Desolation, and it was paid off handsomely in this. And I thought Lake Town was the tightly edited. It was the best use of HFR 3D I've ever seen. The dragon is coming towards you. The flames are real. I felt like I was there and not in a video game.
I loved the innovation of Bane, the son, helping his father Bard in a critical moment. Loved that. I thought that was really good. And the poor boy fainted with fear. Absolutely crippled by fear. It was so well done.
You know, and
there were no false heroics from this boy. And he was just crippled with fear. And it was kind of cool.
The whole concept of the Lance and Bane and Bard working together.
Yeah.
Written on the paper, it's written as the rest of the movies are for comedy. That is a very great, funny scene. Like, don't move, man, don't move, son.
Don't move.
And then jumping to the shoreline, where you have people like on the edge of chaos, because they're like, what do we do now? And they're ready to bite each other's heads off, and then you have this comedy provided from Alfred. And some people want to complain that too much Alfred, not enough X. And I thought, you know what, Alfred needed to be in this movie. He was replacing several characters that we saw in Lord of the Rings. He's the comic element of the third movie,
because there is no other comic element. There's no comedy from the 13 Dwarves. There's no comedy from anybody, period, except Alfred. But we're going to talk on another week about everything that is wrong with Battle of the Five Armies.
But I thought Alfred was right. I
thought there was too much. I thought there were too many one-note gags that reinforced the same psychological point about Alfred over and over. His cowardice didn't need to be demonstrated in 6 or 7 different ways. You demonstrate his cowardice once or twice, but then it becomes an ongoing string of Alfred. We'll talk about that on another week.
Well, I like them showing the fact that
it was refreshing that he wasn't all grim and greasy like Wormtongue. He was a Wormtongue character who was not as grim and serious as Grima Wormtongue. He was a lot of levity and even physical comedy, even cross-dressing. Yeah, I mean, they even take it to that point with his character. You know.
Well, we're getting text messages that people agree with you. A little too much Alfred, but I do want to say that I love the fact that Alfred was world building. Okay, and I think that
I did like what Ryan Gage was doing. I did like what the actor was doing with the comedy.
Was great. Yeah, the script was on point. It could have been cut for more comedy, but that's a different discussion. But I think showing Alfred as part of this small community again. Everybody bands together. They don't cast him out. They don't say, "Hey, you stay in Lake Town while we go to Dale." Like everyone still accepts. They want to punch him, and they do, but
they wanted to hang him.
They still keep him in.
Bard steps forward with another level of good conscience, and his character is supposed to be the antithesis of Alfred, a human who has not been tainted with cowardice and avarice. And in every decision that Bard makes as a character, there's always a more noble and altruistic goal in Bard's psychological makeup. I will say it's very interesting that Luke Evans' character gets a lot more bandwidth than Bard did in Desolation of Smaug, and we get a lot closer to Bard, we understand his psychology better, and I actually liked him a lot.
Really?
I liked Luke Evans a lot.
I felt like he was set up in the second movie as a little, a family man and a little more lighthearted. But I feel like Bard, he was just too heavy in this film.
No, I thought it was just right.
He was always heavy. No, he was just like
not always heavy. No, he was always honorable, but not always heavy.
Okay.
You can be honorable and not be played with like heavy-handedness. But let's just say that there's not a lot of subtlety in general. In this script, in general, you're not looking for real subtleties. Things are very straightforward in this bit of storytelling.
Emily,
they really are.
Emily says that the cross-dressing did not make me laugh. I loved it. I thought it was wonderful. Here's a little tidbit. Now, follow me here, okay? The cross-dressing when he's dressed as an old lady and then he's scooping gold into his blouse and everything like that. It totally reminded me of Disney's Robin Hood.
It reminded me of Robin Hood too. Yes,
when the bear and the wolf,
that would be Baloo and the fox, Robin Hood,
right? And
it wasn't Baloo. It was actually Little John.
Little John.
It was Little John and Robin.
Solid gold hubcaps.
They were trying to steal the gold from Prince John.
And you see Baloo,
and they're dressed up as fake fortune tellers. Remember? Yeah. And Peter Ustinov is the voice of Prince John. Is very funny. It's very good stuff.
But it
did remind me of that. Yes.
Prince John Baloo fills up his bosom full of gold.
No, not Prince John, who is
Little John.
Little John.
Little John fills up his bosom full of gold, and we see the same exact thing happen with Alfred.
Yes.
Now, follow me here. Guess who was second unit director or first assistant director of this movie? It was Andy Serkis, right?
Yes, that's right. Oh, yes.
Andy Serkis. Guess what movie Andy Serkis got signed to direct?
Well, not Robin Hood, but
The Jungle Book.
The Jungle Book, yes.
Andy Serkis is doing The Jungle Book.
Yes.
And it's going to be full in motion capture. So you have to believe that Andy Serkis was up on The Jungle Book and the Robin Hood.
And the Disney classics?
The Disney classic Robin Hood, it uses Jungle Book characters. It uses the same Baloo character and uses a lot of the same animations from the Jungle Book.
And it was the same voice actor who was Baloo in Disney's Jungle Book was the voice of Little John, Robin Hood's friend. Same voice.
Disney makes Jungle Book.
I get it.
Disney makes Robin Hood.
But still.
And then Andy Serkis gets hired to do a new version of Jungle Book. And then Andy Serkis possibly directs a scene that uses a Disney joke.
A Disney gag. A Disney animation gag.
So there is a connection.
There's only one... Continuing our conversation with what's right with this movie, the part where Alfred is played correctly in that last bit when he disappears with his gold stuffed in his bra, there's a shot of our friend Luke Evans, his character Bard, talking with Alfred, and Alfred is saying, "Don't judge me. Everyone's in it for themselves. This is where I'm just gonna." Every man for himself. And Bard actually says something to him in dialogue. There are other things in life that are more important, worth living for. And Alfred says, "Oh yeah, like what?" And then the camera pulls to the side, and there's all of Bard's family. His 3 children, what Bard is meaning, what his whole heart and his psychological mindset is built around, the camera just moves, and they reveal his kids who are watching Alfred and silently judging him as he's packing up, stealing gold coins, and running off looking like, a crazy person. And they have that knowing look on their face, like, we have family, we have love, and we have the support of each other. We have something that you, in your avarice, will never have. And I find that thematically very true to what Tolkien was writing in the final chapters of the Hobbit book. That the end of the Master of Lake Town and his death and his end after the dragon was destroyed was a statement against the avarice that would take over the hearts of men. How about the avarice theme? It takes over Thorin, and then Thorin becomes the biggest piece of this movie's puzzle. And it's fascinating to watch what Richard Armitage delivers on the theme of avarice and that cursed treasure that has the dragon sickness on it. Wasn't that well done?
It was amazing.
Wasn't that well done?
You were just mentioning that just to close up on Alfred. The reason I think Alfred works in this because we need some comedy somewhere. Is that people, I hear a lot of people complain too much screen time. Why do they even keep him around? Why do they keep giving him work? And
that's kind of mean. I like what Ryan Gage was doing.
I remember.
He's very funny.
No, not as a performer, but as a character. Why didn't they just hang him or drown him? And I thought, he's obviously duplicitous, and everybody knows about it. And I thought the same thing when Two Towers came out and Wormtongue. I'm like, everyone knows Wormtongue's duplicitous. Why is he still in power? Why is he still the king of Rohan's assistant? I always thought that was weird. And so I'm getting the same feel out of Alfred that I got out of Wormtongue. I'm like, that guy shouldn't be in any position of power, yet he is, and the locals allow it. And here we are. Alfred is the same type of person and the same type of personality with the same character flaws. And now fandom has felt like, oh, Alfred, what a waste, what a useless, this is not true to Tolkien. I'm like, it's the same as Wormtongue. So I feel like he was appropriate for the movie, and kudos to you. This is everything that's right with The Hobbit, and I am on the Alfred train. But you were talking about Richard Armitage and the gold sickness. I feel like the gold is its own character.
Yeah, it was great. It was really great how they visualized all of that. But before we get to that, which is near the second third of the film, it's the second act. How about the way the first act of the movie finishes up with the Battle of Dol Guldur?
Oh, we just jumped right into it. Like, literally, here, let's kill the dragon, and then, boom.
Well, actually, there was a whisper of Galadriel's voice in Gandalf's ear saying, "You are not alone." And then we went back to Lake Town and had some other business there. And then we went back to Dol Guldur several minutes later. And you know what happens in Dol Guldur? You guys have all seen the movie.
Fan service, that's what happens.
Ultra fan service. I was just like, woo! My hat was blown off my head. Everybody was blown away by 92-year-old Christopher Lee coming in and kicking ass like nobody's business. He turned all
that was everything we love about Peter Jackson.
It was a big action set piece, and Sauron, not pretending to be anything else anymore except himself, Sauron just completely blowing And why would he just keep Gandalf alive long enough? And then have one of his underlings just kill this great wizard who represents such a huge, metaphysical threat to Sauron. He's one of the Maiar spirits like Sauron is. Gandalf, if you're in a real war movie, keep a prisoner alive unnecessarily unless you had a real reason to and it was part of the plot. Ha!
Well, I don't know. At that point, Sauron is trying to make deals, wheel and deal. He was trying to make deals with the dragon. He was trying to make deals with the Great Goblin. Look, Sauron was trying to make deals with everybody. So, of course, he would keep a carrot as strong as Gandalf. Or
okay,
keep him out of the thing. But I feel like the Bolg, the original Bolg, as we saw... that Galadriel just goes. I thought, man, he is scary. He is scarier than anything that I saw out of a white orc.
Yeah,
that Bolg. But then we just he jumps right. Peter Jackson jumps right in to this epic battle scene with the Nine, and yes.
I
mean, they would get knocked down, then they would climb up the mountains. It was pretty intense, and each of the Nine had his own look. It wasn't just a bunch of 9 black cloaked riders. It was actually like 9 individuals.
Yeah, the individual 9 specters of the 9 revealed in their full original cultural armor that represents the different races and places across, the greater continent where they came from. Some of these, of the 9 kings of men, came from other places way off the map that we don't see on a regular Middle-earth map. But Weta designed an Easterling's armor that looks just like the Easterlings we've seen in Return of the King. Mm-hmm. He designed a very familiar Witch King coronet, a headpiece, and gear to make us definitely recognize Angmar when we were seeing him. And even in the subtitles, there's a reference to, the kingdom of Angmar will be reborn.
That was amazing to hear the black speech, Benedict Cumberbatch's speech.
Yeah.
Speak the black speech of 3 rings were given to, and the 7 were given to. And
3 rings for the Elven kings under the sky.
That is Benedict Cumberbatch's voice.
7 for the Dwarf Lords in their halls of stone. But it was the original black speech of Mordor that Tolkien wrote in Fellowship of the Ring, and they used it, and actually... Cate Blanchett finished the verse that had never been said in any of the movies, 9 for mortal men doomed to die. And she looks around, and oh my gosh, freak out time. A lot of fans complain that the fight sequence with, Hugo Weaving showing up with Cate Blanchett and Christopher Lee, it looks a little bit video game sequence, but I don't mind the way that it looks. I think that it looked very kinetic and very exciting, and I thought it was really awesome. One of our chatters here in our live chat room, my friend, Sheepish Lion, had said, why would an elf like Galadriel have so much power? Galadriel turns into the Wicked Witch of the West, and Elrond is like, well, I have a sword. And he says, why? Here's this question about why would Galadriel have so much power, obvious outside power being shown when, we're dealing with a wizard who doesn't have as much power as she has. So you were questioning, why does Galadriel seem to have more power to disperse Sauron more than, the wizard Gandalf himself?
Well, no,
it's a very interesting question.
Even Saruman, you can see Saruman use his hand and try to use his power to blow out that flame.
Yes.
Like, Saruman's going like this, and
And it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
So, here you go. He says, and yes, we're just talking about this. I love the fact that we have a live chat here with everybody.
If you're just joining us, this is TheOneRing.net Torn Tuesday.
Yes, it is.
Live on Ustream.tv, and we're talking about everything right with The Hobbit, the Battle of 5 Armies, and we've got a live chat room that he's trying to find an old quote.
Because we have a lot of chatting going on. We're trying to keep up with everybody.
Right now we're talking about some of the best stuff in the movie was within the first 20 minutes. The first 10 minutes we see a dragon. The next 10 minutes we have this epic battle that everybody was waiting for. Battle ready Galadriel, sword wielding Elrond. Saruman the Brave. I mean, it was everything that we'd hoped for. So I feel like he did it well. And then on my third viewing, I didn't really catch what Galadriel was saying. You know, when she goes into evil witch mode, like, you are banished. You know, it wasn't until the third viewing where it really picked up.
Oh, I immediately heard what she said.
The words that she was saying.
She said, "Begone, servant of Morgoth. You are nameless. Faceless. Formless," is what she said. And she banished him with the power of the light of Eärendil. And my friend in the chat was saying, no other elf has ever demonstrated that much power. Well, probably not since Feanor. Probably the last elf to demonstrate that much power would have been Feanor, and it turned into a pretty big, ugly mess, as you remember from the Silmarillion. And it ended up with, a civil war between the elves and the great shedding of blood between elven kindred.
Eva says her favorite shot from Battle of Five Armies was Galadriel walking into Dol Guldur.
Yes.
I tell you, that was amazing. I think that whole scene, if there's a longer extended cut, great. I think Peter Jackson delivered in this cut exactly what we wanted to see. That
there will be
not
an
only
extended
delivered on the action, delivered on the myth building, and really added to the mythology of Middle Earth that didn't have any precedent in any of the other movies. This wasn't like, oh, let's copy what we did over there here. No, this was a good standalone. At the end of Return of the King, we were promised an epic battle between King Aragorn and Sauron.
And they filmed it.
And they actually filmed.
They tried to film some of it.
They filmed
yes.
a battle, and then at the end, but when the movie came out, Peter Jackson decided, you know what, he shouldn't fight Sauron. So this was the Sauron battle of the entire Middle-earth 6-film series, and it was well done, well delivered. Congratulations to
I thought it was
Kate Blanchett.
I thought it was pretty damn cool.
Really delivered.
I don't think that there's a problem with Miss Galadriel being one of the oldest remaining Noldorin in all of Arda, while the other elves who are at her age and her stature of power, they've all returned to Valinor. She's the only one left who still has that kind of power. And remember that the wizards were forbidden by an edict from Manwë. They were forbidden by their superiors on the Council of the Valar to even show open force against force, to show themselves openly. Galadriel did not have that restriction on her. Okay? Now you guys kind of get that. Galadriel had no restriction on her the way that the wizards did for showing her own true power. And that's probably why Peter Jackson felt, contextually good about demonstrating her power that way.
So where did Saruman go? That belt was never really resolved. But we do get...
where does Saruman go? Well, I think in the extended edition of this movie, we will see Saruman looking through the rubble of Dol Guldur and finding a Palantir. Yeah,
I think so too. I think so that happens. So
I do think so.
From the Dol Guldur stuff, we jump all the way back to Erebor, and the humans are setting up at Dale. The elves are coming in to claim their stake. The humans want their stake. What I thought was really, really well done. It caught me off guard.
What's that?
But I think the strongest character and the strongest performance in the entire Battle of Five Armies is Lee Pace as Thranduil. He comes in, and
his Thranduil was awesome.
You expect a Thranduil that is self-serving and greedy and be like, I just want what I want, I'm gonna get out. But the Thranduil that we see in Battle of Five Armies, as portrayed by Lee Pace, he shows up on the scene with food and drink for the humans. He's ready to jump into Erebor, and he listens to Bard, and he respects the humans' land and says, "Okay, bro, you want to negotiate? You go first. Go ahead. And then
yeah, he does.
And then he goes a third time.
Yep.
He rather than marching on Erebor after Thorin says GTFO, he comes back a third time in front of Thorin and says, "Hey, bro, let's talk about this, man. Like, I got this. You want it."
Mm-hmm.
And then when the battle starts, the orcs attack. The dwarves immediately go into battle. They never shy from a fight. They're actually excited about a fight.
That's true.
And Gandalf is like, "Hey, bro, you're gonna let them go by their own?" And without even a hesitation, I mean, it wasn't even a moment's notice. No dwarf died in battle before the elves jumped over the dwarves and jumped in. So throughout the entire Battle of Five Armies, Thranduil is just like, he's giving to the humans. He gives Thorin a few chances. He gives Bard a few chances. The elves attack first. And then the way...
Thranduil and his elves bring a huge wagon of food and provisions and water and vegetables and supplies for all the people in Dale, who are the barely scrabbling survivors of Lake Town's destruction. And there they are in Dale, and Thranduil actually comes up with humanitarian aid. However, the best thing about Lee Pace's performance is his nasty, bitchy attitude with Gandalf and everybody else. Isn't that funny?
It's so good.
It's so funny how lippy, and I mean really condescending and lippy.
That's in the delivery.
Thranduil is so condescending and so, like, harsh, he is so lippy.
How much of Thranduil's dialogue is true to Tolkien?
I don't know. Actually, a lot of Tolkien's little side sentences give you an insight into the Elven King's psychology.
So we don't have a lot of this dialogue.
We don't have a lot of this dialogue that we have in this movie, but we do have other side comments from Tolkien saying, if the Elven King had one weakness, it was for treasure and for pretty sparkling white gems. And so all that stuff is literally in there, and the characterization of that Philippa Boyens and Fran Walsh have given us, along with their wonderful actor Lee Pace, is to give us a Thranduil who is kind of an over-elegant fop of an elf king who is really prissy, really haughty, and condescending to other people. Nobody else in Middle-earth who's in a power position would ever speak to Mithrandir with that kind of attitude. Nobody. I've said before, it's amazing to watch.
But
it's really great.
He's fair. He's fair through and through. I fully expected him to say to ignore Bard and like, dude, you're not even in power, man.
Oh yeah, we got a message on the hotline. All I was thinking during Thranduil's scenes was, oh snap! Yeah, Mr. Thranduil had a whole lot of snap moments. He really did. It was like, all of a sudden, you could transpose Thranduil into a Tyler Perry movie and put him in total, black drag, and it would be so funny because Thranduil would give the exact same,
it's not so.
I love it. He would give the exact same delivery.
Sass, but the most
very sassy.
The most important character development again. Peter Jackson.
Medea meets Thranduil. That would be a funny movie. The Medea Thranduil crossover movie would be so funny. They would just snap at each other all day. It would be hilarious.
Peter Jackson really came through on this third film with character and world building through the character of Thranduil, all the way to the end, where every single piece of dialogue, every scene with Thranduil is world building and sets the stage for the relationship that Legolas has with everybody else for the rest of his life. And the most interesting thing I found is we posted on Twitter and Facebook, is Thranduil a good father? And hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments saying he is a flawed person who has lost his wife. But the debate still stands. But a lot of people who a year ago would have said Thranduil is not a great father, what a terrible person, what a terrible king, and what a terrible leader, have come out of this third movie saying, you know what, now we understand him. Mm-hmm. And Thranduil is a fair father. A lot of people think Thranduil is a fair father who is just looking right just looking out and trying to do right in the face of so much drama.
There's another reason, perhaps, why Thranduil and Bard become two leaders who have so much in common, because they've both lost their wives. Bard lost his wife unexpectedly, and she's gone, and so Thranduil is also a single father, raising his own, and I think that Bard and Thranduil understand each other, and they certainly have more communal agreement between them in this third movie than Thranduil does with anybody else on stage.
There's a comment in the chat room. Thranduil is the Cersei of Middle-earth.
The Cersei of Middle-earth, sort of. Finds it tough to rule, but he rules with an unequivocal
What did you think?
Fist.
I thought it was a perfect closure to the Tauriel storyline, with him coming up and saying, then it was real. If you feel that, then it was real.
Because it was real? She's like, why does it hurt so much? And he says, because it was real.
And I think that says everything about his awareness of
what love is. Love. Well, it also says that Thranduil measures love with an equation of what is painful. It means that Thranduil is one of those persons who realizes if it is that painful, then it must have been a deep and abiding love, if it's a love that hurts you that much. That there is some kind of wisdom there, a bit cynical, perhaps. I'm not that cynical about love and its relationship to, human health and psychology, but under tragic circumstances, Thranduil is instantly willing to forgive her. How about that? He was instantly willing to forgive little Miss Tauriel of her complete defiance of his kingly orders, because she totally gets in his face. Interesting how Tauriel becomes a more interesting character as this third movie goes on. She realizes that she's been banished from the realm, and Legolas says, F you, mother effers, I'm not going to go back to my woodland realm either. If there's no Tauriel gonna go, then I'm not gonna go. Hey, that was the G-rated way to say that, by the way.
Okay.
It was. It passes the G rating test. I think it's really interesting that Tauriel gets to have more conflict in this third film against her own king, her own ruler, because at that point she has nothing to lose. She has no more loyalty to the woodland realm. But neither does Legolas. Legolas is like, all right, we're on our own. Bye. And then they go wandering off hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And then we get this very weird compression of geography as we pretend that Legolas and Tauriel go all the way back to Mount Gundabad and then come all the way back to Erebor.
Oh, yeah.
In just a couple of days.
That's for another episode.
In just a couple of days? No. Anyway, but we'll talk about that.
The question is, do you think
I'm very interested in the way the characters get pulled together. I wasn't sure where the threads were going to go. I was guaranteed my own guesswork that Tauriel was going to die by the end of this film, and indeed, she does not. We don't understand what happens to her after a certain point. It seems there's an unfinished scene, maybe an unfinished funeral that we never got shown in the movie.
Sandulaire in the chat room says, I was a bit underwhelmed by the dialogue, to be honest. I wish the script for that was different. It was too cheesy for me. I feel like there were a lot of cheesy things in Lord of the Rings that I still cringe about. But I feel like even on a third viewing here, I thought all the dialogue with Tauriel did well.
There was no subtlety in the dialogue. This isn't David Mamet. We're not, and we're not going to get any like Peter Schaffer script dialogue like we do in an Amadeus play. The dialogue that we get is a bit more driven by Hollywood blockbuster standards. We're not looking at subtleties of dialogue. So we got what we got. And I'll admit, I agree that you have a point on that.
So, you know what? I just want to say kudos to Peter Jackson, Philippa Fran, and Guillermo del Toro for delivering a new character that was well-rounded, that paid off in the end, and I thought was a wonderful story.
I didn't think it paid off in Desolation of Smaug, but I think the Tauriel character pays off a lot more in the third film.
I think a welcome addition, when seen in context, a welcome addition to these three movies.
The real meat and potatoes, as far as acting goes, is thoroughly with, a short list of three actors who are like the real thespian heart and soul of this movie. Richard Armitage, okay, totally. Martin Freeman, and then ultimately Ian McKellen, because Ian McKellen shows his best acting when he's in a scene not saying any words at all. That scene where Martin Freeman and Ian McKellen are together and they have no dialogue at all, best acting in the whole film, and it reveals volumes and volumes of unspoken things between the two of them, and yet we, the audience, can see all this stuff. That was one of the best bits of the film. I loved it. I love that scene.
The Sheepish Lion says the dialogue in The Two Towers was like poetry from beginning to end. Again, comparing the movies is not fair. It's not fair to anybody. It's not fair to us fans. It's not fair to filmmakers.
Do you suppose it's deliberate? Well, maybe the tone of the Hobbit movies is supposed to be, according to the writers and the producers, lesser or not as highly romantic and not as elevated. Maybe there's a little less of an elevation of tone.
It would be interesting based on that comment to know.
But I'm just saying,
which of the six Middle Earth films have the most Tolkien dialogue?
Has the most Tolkien dialogue?
Has the most Tolkien accurate dialogue. I feel
probably Return of the King.
No, I feel Two Towers. Well, different people say different things, but as far as the dialogue, because the Sheepish Lion is saying the dialogue in Two Towers was like poetry from beginning to end. And
yes, and we even have Treebeard with his own poetry, which was the best. I love that.
I think a lot of the script and a lot of the actual verbiage that you see here in Two Towers is straight off the page. It might be from different characters and lines were given to that character instead of that character.
Well,
but from a poetry standpoint.
Okay. Everybody agrees that when Peter Jackson's movie adaptations work at their very best, it's when he's using straight dialogue right off the page from Professor Tolkien. For example, when Bilbo and Thorin are standing at the gate of Erebor, and way down below, Bard says, well, we've got something right here. We've got the Arkenstone in our hands. And Thorin freaks out and says, this is a trick. This is a ruse. How did you get this? And Bilbo speaks up and says, no, it's real. I gave it to them. That scene is probably one of the very best written dialogue scenes in the whole Hobbit trilogy. Why? Because it's direct dialogue off the page from Tolkien. Yes.
That whole exchange with all the dwarves there?
Exactly like it is in the books.
It's so strong.
And he picks up, Thorin picks up Bilbo and says, damn you, I'll throw you to bits down below. And Gandalf rushes up and says, if you don't like my burglar, don't harm him, please. That is exactly like it is in the book. He doesn't know this yet because he hasn't read it yet. So I don't think we should talk about how much accurate dialogue is in the movies, but let's talk about how these 6 movies change the tone, the actual tonality of language, the way it changes. Start with An Unexpected Journey, work your way all the way through 6 movies, and by the time you get to Return of the King, you will notice a very gradual, evolved elevation. Movie after movie after movie, the tone of the dialogue and the tone of what's at stake between people gets higher and higher and higher. Maybe it was deliberate, I hope, because maybe we're all supposed to be looking at what someone will look at 50 years from now. 50 years from now, someone will look at all 6 films and they'll notice that all the tonal changes of the situations, the little laughter of the goblin, the great goblin, getting his tummy sliced by Gandalf, and he gets killed by Gandalf and has a comedy line and says, that'll do it, right? Well, by the time you get to Return of the King, you're so far away from An Unexpected Journey in tone, there are no more kills like that. There's like serious death scenes where everyone's crying and everyone's weeping, and I think that's the point. The point was a build-up in tone over 6 films.
Here's what Peter...
I think.
One of the best things, again, everything right with Battle of 5 Armies this is probably the best thing that Peter Jackson did with doing a Hobbit prequel trilogy. And much better than even George Lucas did with Star Wars is that you can tell that these movies you can watch beginning to end 1 through 6, not 4, 5, 2, 3, 6, not the original trilogy, then the prequel trilogy.
I love that 4, 5, 2, 3, 6. That's the new Star Wars conventional wisdom. I do like that.
You can watch people coming to Tolkien films brand new. You can watch the first Hobbit movie all the way through Return of the King, and it's well made and is true without spoiling anything. Mm-hmm. It's great. Mm-hmm. It's great. I commend Peter Jackson on thinking big picture in context of all 6 movies.
I think he was thinking big picture.
Really
However,
well done.
there's always the problem that I still had from last year, that Tauriel healing the Morgul arrow of Keeley and her shining like Liv Tyler and doing that whole bit with the King's foil. Mm-hmm. Is just giving us an echo chamber, a repeat session, an echo chamber of things that are happening in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But everybody who's watching these films now in our world are saying, oh, it was never as good as Lord of the Rings was. And we all know that. We know that it's not going to be as good as Lord of the Rings was.
Because the book wasn't. In fact, the book was the book was retconned by Tolkien himself. Like it's not a holy text.
It's not. But The Hobbit itself found itself, Tolkien revised it very specifically when he realized what his Lord of the Rings trilogy was going to become when he had that published. So I don't think that there's a problem with judging The Hobbit on its own merits. The Hobbit trilogy is always getting compared by the trilogy that came before it. What I really wish in another universe that the Hobbit movies had been made first, and that escalation in tone had gone all the way up to the Lord of the Rings movies being made after, and then nobody would be saying what they're saying now, that The Hobbit is insufficient compared to Lord of the Rings. In fact, if it had been made by Peter Jackson in the proper order, everybody would have been praising him infinitely, saying, all hail, Peter, you know what you're doing, that's for sure.
I still feel he deserves all that. He deserves all that credit, but
it's good to be the king.
A
little Mel Brooks joke for you, ladies and gentlemen.
A lot of people in the chat room, talking about how wonderful Thorin and Bilbo's dialogue is. We just started to talk about that, but I think everything with Bilbo was first off written really well and played impeccably. Everything from meeting Thranduil and saying, "Here, have this stone," yeah, that was me. Yeah. Are you the guy that stole my keys?
Gandalf's conduct in Desolation of Smaug and his decision to leave Thorin and company behind on the eaves of Mirkwood was not made fully clear until we saw the extended edition of Desolation of Smaug a year later. But I think that there's an advantage to watching Battle of the Five Armies. The way we're watching it now with a theatrical cut, you understand very clearly Bilbo's psychological motivation with the Arkenstone, and it's played brilliantly. That scene where Bilbo brings that Arkenstone as a gambit to stop a war before the war begins. The way that Bard, Gandalf, and Thranduil react,
trying,
it's just so good. It's really good. And another feather in Peter Jackson's cap, the way the whole subplot with the Arkenstone was handled.
Well, even
great.
Bilbo accepting the mithril coat, that was something that I thought coming into it. I'm like, at some point he's got to get a mithril coat again. Because he gives it to Frodo.
Yeah.
And I thought, that might be a throwaway fan service scene. Who knows? But it was done very well.
Well, we learned something about how Thorin trusts Bilbo. Thorin comes up to him and says, "What's that? What have you got in your hand? Show me." And it's an acorn. And Bilbo shows that he's the only trustworthy person in the whole group at that moment in Thorin's escalating madness. And Thorin realizes, oh, he's not stealing any Arkenstone from me. He just has an acorn. He wants to take it home and plant that. That's not in the book. It's not in Tolkien. But it was an invention of the writers that really does reinforce other levels of characters' behavior and psychology. It works very well, doesn't it?
Yes.
I thought it worked very, very well. And it was very touching for Martin Freeman to show us that he's still Bilbo Baggins after all. It was really lovely.
It
was really a lovely bit.
It was a strong.
There's a lot of strong bits.
Performance. The performances were all strong, and
very strong. Yes.
I've read some reviews that were complaining that everything with the ring was heavy-handed, and suddenly you hear the ring score again, and oh, you should pay attention to this ring. I thought no, that was the perfect tone to set. Every time he uses the ring, every time you see the ring, it's the right amount of strength, because as you remember in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Bilbo says, Gandalf, I feel spread thin. I feel like buttered over too much toast.
Like not enough butter scraped over too much bread.
Yeah,
as the phrase goes. Yes.
So you get that feeling. You start to get that feeling here in this third movie. Where Bilbo is just he's just doing him, and then he realizes he can do more. And then he realizes he can do more. So he never shies away. He starts to learn from the dwarves, and he doesn't shy away from doing more. Whereas he was reluctant in the first two movies. He was like, I got to go back and get my pocket handkerchief. I got to go back. I can't do that. I can't do that. But in this movie, you see him grow as a person.
That's a very
So again, another thing really right about this movie, they got Bilbo right. Now, you've been saying over the last two movies, Bilbo is right. So, here we are. I think he did very well. Peter Jackson and Martin Freeman did very well with this.
I agree. Very much.
A lot of people in the chat room are talking about Dane Ironfoot.
Dane Ironfoot, yes.
So let's back up a little bit. Let's tell you what happened. Okay, Dane Ironfoot's played by Billy Connolly,
our very favorite Billy Connolly.
Oh, he's one of the most funny actors and comedians in the entire world.
And they actually gave Dane Ironfoot some unexpected, nasty British slang. Americans don't seem to mind it, but I'm sure British audiences were like, oh my God, he just say what I thought he said in a kid's movie?
They made him a redhead?
He said, why don't you all just sod off? Which is the equivalent of saying, F you, mother effers. But that was total British slang, and Dane Ironfoot unabashedly says it. Why don't you all just sod off? It was so...
I thought Dane...
fun. That was very Billy Connolly. That was great.
Dane was awesome on the written page. I mean, the idea that he's headbutting as much as he's using his big mallet. And I thought, that pays off when we first see the dwarves. The first thing Dwalin does is he headbutts his companion.
Yeah.
And I thought, they set these dwarves up from the very first shot in An Unexpected Journey that these guys use their heads, and they're not afraid to be aggressive with their head. And we don't see any of that. I even expected that when Thorin and Keely come together and they're like, hey bro, I'm with you.
Yes.
Like I expected like a bro headbutt, like, hey man, we're in this together. Yeah, we are Durin's line, and let's headbutt each other. Like I was expecting that. I didn't get it, but a lot of fans appreciated that quiet moment. But I felt like Dane delivered on the promise of dwarves.
I love the way he yelled at Thranduil and called him an unfaithful sprite. Or what did he call him? Faithless. A faithless sprite.
There was so much disrespect. So Thranduil disrespects Gandalf, which is like, oh. And then Dane disrespects Thranduil, and everyone's like, oh.
Yeah. It's pretty good. It's really pretty good to see.
So here's what we knew. Here's what we know.
Higher ups in Middle Earth are bad-mouthing each other.
Richard Taylor and the team at Weta were really, really excited, really proud of this huge costume and armor and mohawk that they had given to Billy Connolly. It's fantastic. Hopefully some of these shots come out one day. And Billy Connolly had just been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and then I guess he has cancer as well. So he's dealing with two really intense things, and Parkinson's was just starting to set in.
Very debilitating. Yes.
But they still went ahead with shooting. He got insurance to film his scenes, and they got through all the scenes that they needed to shoot with Billy Connolly, and they were really excited. Everyone I've talked to at Weta for the last 2 years has been like, man, Billy really performs well. All the actors have been like, wait till you see Billy. They've taken a large man and made him larger.
Yes.
And when you get to the Battle of the Five Armies, what you see on screen, we've confirmed it now. it's 100% CG character. They actually took all of Billy Connolly's film scenes, replaced them all.
They did?
With a completely
Really?
100% CG character of Dane
based on his
Ironfoot.
performance.
All the close-ups.
Where did we confirm this?
All the close-ups you see of his face, everything. You notice that his lips just seemed a little bit off, and his eyes just weren't as heavy as you'd expect. It's all CG, and part of this is confirmed in the new Hobbit Chronicles book for Battle of the Five Armies, where the visual effects supervisors at Weta said, halfway through post-production, Peter Jackson came to us and said, "Hey, I think we should make Dane CG. I didn't quite get the performance out of him through all the prosthetics and makeup." Which I find hard to believe because they did so well on Lord of the Rings trilogy, being able to get performances out of heavily prosthetic.
With one notable exception. And maybe Dane Ironfoot is now the equivalent. It would be the mouth of Sauron, where they worked on him outside the Black Gate of Mordor, and they couldn't get the prosthetics to work the way they wanted it to work, and Peter Jackson felt like, I'm not really getting, the performance out of this actor for the mouth of Sauron, and so in the theatrical version, he was removed. He wasn't there at all, because Peter, in the end, wasn't happy with the practical effects.
He was removed.
He was removed.
The key thing is he was removed and replaced with a different character. Same with Bolg. Peter Jackson says he didn't quite get what he wanted out of Bolg, and he replaced him with a digital character that looked completely different.
Yes.
Here we are with Dane Ironfoot. They replaced the actor, a notable actor, with a completely CG creation, and there's just something just a little bit off.
A little bit off. Well, his war boar that he's riding into battle is awesome. And
everything is awesome. I mean, even Billy Connolly was like, "Wait till you see the boar I'm riding." Like
riding a boar into battle.
They built something. They built a boar that he could ride with fur and that he was grabbing onto and stuff like that. So Dane Ironfoot, I thought, man, there's no way that Dane can Peter Jackson can deliver on a character that I was looking forward to so much, and character delivers, but he is. Not Billy Connolly. But
it looks a little different than
he's not
what
Billy
you thought it was going to be.
He sounds like Billy Connolly, but he doesn't look like Billy Connolly.
He had this incredible beard mustache design, and it looked as if his beard and mustache was a little bit more CGI. His face looked like his real face, but his beard looked like it was a little bit CGI.
It was all. I'm hearing that it's all CGI. The
entire thing.
They made his head bigger than his shoulders. They shortened his thing.
You mean they went whole Bob Zemeckis like he did on Beowulf and Polar Express?
As far as
and did a whole CGI animation.
Dane Ironfoot is a completely CG character.
Like Gollum.
When he's having a conversation with Gandalf, he's like, "You should just get off this land." That's a completely CG thing, and some people had noticed it on Twitter over the last week. We started seeing responses from fans saying, there was something off about his lips, like they weren't as expressive. And if you've seen Billy Connolly and everything from the Boondock Saints to any of his comedic performances, he's a very physical comedian. He commands a stage. Even when he's sitting down,
he does.
His hair moves in a wonderful curly way. Like his beard, his mustache. There's something about Billy Connolly that is just so commanding and authentic and real and funny. And I don't know why they replaced him. I hope to see some of that footage eventually to see what Billy Connolly looked like on.
We will next year in the extended edition of BOTFA when we see what they really changed from Dane Ironfoot original concept execution of physical armor to the CG version.
We do know that they filmed his coronation as King of Erebor. We do know that they filmed Dane overseeing the funeral of the Lion of Durin.
Wow.
So there is a lot more Dane to be seen in the extended edition. So I'm a little conflicted, but I'm going to say for the purpose of this conversation that Dane delivered, and I think
he did.
Dane Ironfoot
the character was great,
and his commanding of the armies and just his war strategy is something that's really right with the Hobbit Battle of Five Armies.
I agree, and I also agree with the addition of the great wereworms of the North.
Yes, that was wonderful.
Wasn't that cool?
Yes.
A lot of fans complain, oh, why does it look like Dune? All of a sudden we're in Frank Herbert's Arrakis, and we're in Dune now.
And I'm like, too much.
Well, that's because I'm a hardcore sci-fi fan. But
yeah.
Let me tell you something. I can tell you that throwaway sentence in the book is a real sentence in the book, where he says, Bilbo says, if I have to go all the way to the ends of the earth and to fight off the wereworms of the great desert and the farthest east, I'll do it if I can. And Bilbo says that, and these wereworms are mentioned by Bilbo as if they're just some, fancy folktale that the Shire folk have amongst themselves, as if the hobbits have their own weird legends of great vast mythical creatures from far away. And they so why not extrapolate them and make them real? It gives an excuse and gives an explanation as to how all the orcs under the command of Azog could go underground
and surprise all these armies
and avoid the sunlight over great distances. I think it's awesome.
And it starts.
That was really cool.
It starts to show how the armies of Azog and Sauron have strategy. They're sending the bats, they're sending the ravens, a fell voice on the air. You start to see that these aren't just dumb dorks that can only move at night. Like, these are this is a whole military strategy that is very carefully considered, and they make the most of it. And I thought the trolls were amazing. I thought everything from the wall ramming trolls to the barrel
the big old giant troll who had that bulwark busting helmet thing on his head. His job before he expires is just to smash his head into a wall and knock a wall down, and then he goes and he's dead. He did his job. He's dead.
Everything from
that was so cool.
And the banners,
everyone laughed and clapped at that. They thought that was funny.
Azog with the banners up top, and he's like, okay, let's move the banners this way and call it. Like, the wartime strategy, I think, is one of the things that's really right with with this movie.
I agree. There he is. That's so.
it was even more than Return of the King, where it's like, oh, let's just find them on their flanks, in the sunlight. This was like, there was a lot of 5 army strategies going on.
There was a lot of language in Tolkien's book where he explains different fronts of the fighting between the armies, between Bard and Thranduil's forces and the dwarves of the Iron Hills. And the way Tolkien describes it, about the eastern spur of the mountain versus the southern spur of the mountain, you can actually see it in Peter's film. Peter extrapolates all that very, very closely to what Tolkien wrote. Well, what do you mean, yes? You haven't read it yet. You don't even know. But let me tell you something else that's cool. Sheepish Lion and our other friends who are in the chat, I do feel a big missing piece about Dane getting the Arkenstone and taking over the royal throne in Erebor after the deaths of Keely and Feely and Thorin. A lot of you guys commented in the chat room earlier during our show that you were expecting Keely's death, but the way Keely and Feely were killed was shocking. Shocking and surprising, because you weren't sure how they were going to die.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to this conversation of everything that's right with Battle of 5 Armies.
Well, that whole battle at Ravenhill was awesome.
The whole battle, from the way Bilbo gets there.
Yeah.
Dwalin cleaning house.
Yeah.
Oh, there's 100 goblins. I can take care of them.
Yeah.
Feeling Keely going on recon and be like, all right, you go that way, I'll go this way.
Uh-huh.
I loved a lot of the stuff that Legolas did, from putting the tower down over the ravine.
That was so cool. Yeah,
I loved
that was very cool.
The under the ice thing. I tell you, the final battle on the ice was just an epic.
The frozen waterfall.
It was not only was it a great technical demo. I've never seen stuff look so real. Like ice, water, looking through filtered ice.
Yeah.
Like the sunlight, clouds. I thought everything about that final battle was awesome. I loved that he the way Azog came back. It was just very well done.
Some fans have complained about the pacing, that you would cut away from the main battle of 5 armies and keep cutting back to the one Microphone should be on. Yes.
There it is.
Hey, we have sound back on.
Well, I feel like the CG creatures of Balg and Azog, their final battle with the elf and the dwarf, really hit it spot on. It was great. Like,
yeah, I agree.
You really feel that the
climactic tete-a-tete between arch nemeses, the two of them.
The technical demonstration of the final 20 minutes of Battle of Five Armies and that whole final battle is deserving of an Oscar in itself. You had ice and water and blood and CG creatures
and eagles
and
all the great eagles.
Well, the eagles and Beorn, I'm gonna save for our next conversation
because there wasn't enough of them. There's only one tiny shot of Beorn, who does an amazing bit of shape-shifting in mid-air, and then you get to see one single shot of Beorn. Just one. He's rampaging through the ranks of the evil goblins and orcs. And then we never see Beorn again. I mean, come on.
I feel like the
all right, we'll save that for another conversation.
The hard-fought battle between the elves and the white orcs and everything in the snow along the glacier or against the frozen waterfall was really, really well done.
Our chatter here, Rocket Hobbit, says that Azog actually won in the end. He wiped out the line of Durin.
I don't know what the book originally said, but I thought it was a well played out. The people were fearful of Azog. Gandalf knew him. All the elves knew him. He was the leader of the armies of the orcs and goblins, and
even though he should have technically been dead.
And in this story, in the other two movies, we have this comedy of errors. He doesn't like his first henchman, so he kills him in the first scene in an unexpected journey.
Yes, he
does. He keeps losing Thorin, he
does.
And the interesting thing I thought was Gandalf saying, the dwarves reclaimed the mountain they were never supposed to.
Another excellent bit, before we lose our complete time frame, because we've already got an hour and a half of our show already under us, another one of the best things that was right about this film, aside from the scene of unspoken dialogue between Martin Freeman and Ian McKellen, which was one of the best things ever, another thing that they did right was Thranduil sending his son Legolas off to look for Strider. That was great. Really great. I loved it.
Sheepish Lion says, look for the upcoming Hobbit on Ice tour.
Yeah. There'll be the whole...
I would actually go and see that.
A figure skating Hobbit show?
Yeah, where they're like sword fighting on skates.
Would you see a figure skating Hobbit show?
Yes, I would. I would love it. But seeing Azog's final breath in full frame, really close, HFR 3D. I mean, he you could touch him. You could see inside each scar and how deep each gash went on his face. Really, really a technical achievement. Give him an Oscar, especially for this movie, on the visual effects.
I really wish that the Oscars would have given them more technical categories, like the hair and makeup and the other things that they didn't advance in the next round for.
Yeah, I wonder if they replaced Dane, because they didn't get an Oscar for the first two movies for hair and makeup, and they're like, obviously our hair and makeup isn't good enough.
Oh, I don't know if that would be it or not, but interesting.
You have to wonder.
You do have to wonder at some of these things.
Well, you were just talking, as we're wrapping up, you were just talking about how Gandalf was probably the most successful character in Battle of Five Armies when it comes to being true to Tolkien and really furthering the story. I mean, obviously we're going to get a great performance out of Ian McKellen, but he really, you kind of see his motivation, you see his exhaustion of I sent him on this quest. He wasn't supposed to finish it, and him bowing his head when Thranduil was like, "Dude, you started this. You'll forgive me if I finish it." And Gandalf's like, "Yeah, they weren't supposed to meet it." So
a question from Hello Ellen Design. Cliff, did Legolas actually spend any time with Aragorn? That didn't make any sense to me. In the books, yes. Legolas and a younger Aragorn were friends, and they did know each other, and there was a true relationship between Aragorn and other elves that were in the area of Imladris, Rivendell. And during the episode of The Hunt for Gollum, well, Gandalf and Aragorn together colluded with the people of the Woodland Realm, who kept Gollum prisoner for a brief length of time. So yes, Aragorn and Legolas would have come into contact with each other. That is canonical. It is true. And how about that? Don't you think that that one little bit of dialogue between Lee Pace and Orlando Bloom sort of leaves the door open for The Hunt for Gollum as another side movie?
I think
it could be a side movie.
There's
just
a
like
lot.
The new Star Wars universe is going to be rebooted with its own side characters getting side projects.
Yep.
That's interesting, isn't it?
I think so. So does the Battle of Five Armies make up for all the faults you felt in the first two Hobbit movies?
Well, I didn't find too many perilous faults in the first Hobbit movie. I found more difficulties and faults with the second Hobbit film. The third one brings a lot of things into perspective, and it brings other things that I did not appreciate into a much more appreciable light. So the answer is yes.
So basically, Peter Jackson fixed what we thought needed fixing, but that was his plan all along.
Yes.
There's a lot to be thankful for. 3 Hobbit movies. At the end of all this, I think it was the right decision. More Middle-earth, the better. In fact, we're ready to go back again with, a movie about Legolas.
Well, I'm ready for The Hunt for Gollum, and you know what? All they have to do is get Orlando Bloom to sign on and have another actor sign on to be a younger version of Viggo, and they're off. They're off and running. I wonder if Gandalf would ever come back to do his bits in The Hunt of Gollum.
I'm sure.
Andy Serkis would.
Yes.
Andy Serkis would be glad to come back and do Gollum again. He'd love that.
Well, a lot of people in the chat room saying Battle of Five Armies is their favorite Hobbit movie. I didn't on my first viewing. I said Desolation was still my favorite, but now that I'm on my fourth viewing of Battle of Five Armies, I got to say this movie is fantastic. I can't wait for the extended edition.
Congratulations to all the filmmakers, to all the cast and crew, and the writers and the director. And a very interesting conversation that I had on the side with Philippa Boyens during premiere week.
Yeah.
Do you know what she said?
What did she say?
With all the changes that have happened to the story, everything that transformed from The Hobbit, the book, into The Hobbit, a sprawling 3-movie set, she asked me about one thing and one thing only.
What's that?
She didn't ask about Tauriel, whether it was okay to add a new character. She didn't ask about, bookending the movie with Bilbo and Frodo on the morning of the birthday party. She didn't ask me about any of the deviations from the script, except one. She said, do you think that the fans will be okay with that little lie that Bilbo has at the end of the film, where he says, Gandalf confronts Bilbo and says, I know you've got that ring. And Bilbo goes, what ring? What? And Gandalf says, no, I know you've got it. I've been eyeing you since the Goblin Caves, and I know that something's different about you. And Bilbo says, well, I'm glad you're looking out for me. And then he says, don't worry about it. I lost it. I don't have it anymore. I lost it in the battle. And then he makes that little white lie. And Philippa Boyens, let me say that again, Oscar winner Philippa Boyens, looked me in the eye and she said, do you think the fans will have a problem with Bilbo telling that little white lie to Gandalf? And I said, really? This is fascinating, because this reveals that there's still a strong tether connecting the writers and what they worry about and what they think about what the fans are going to think of their work, even at the fundamental level. And I said to her, I don't think there's any problem with that at all, really, because it shows perhaps the earliest shades of an influence that the ring would be having on Bilbo, that he would even cough up white lies, to innocently throw someone off the track, that he would still say, okay, haha, Gandalf, you got me, but, I don't have that ring anymore, just to throw a red herring out there. I think it might be an influential statement from the ring's perspective that Bilbo would throw a little lie out like that. And I told her, I don't think the fans would be upset with you for that choice. What do you think?
I think the chat room is right. I think it's accurate to what was in the books. That's what Aravandi is saying. So, well, there's so much to like about this movie. See it again and again and again. I will see it probably a few more times. Look for it in HFR 2D, Peter Jackson's preferred format.
And maybe in the extended edition of Battle of the Five Armies next year, we will find out what happens to Tauriel's character, who is mysteriously left alone with weeping and crying, and she says that she wants to bury Keeley, doesn't she?
No, she says they want to bury him. Bury him.
She says, I want to bury him.
No, she says they want to bury him. Is that right?
No.
So, yeah.
She confesses to herself that she wants to personally take care of this individual that she had. No. And she says she wants to bury him.
No, she says they want to bury him. Like, that elves, she doesn't want to bury him.
I guess elves don't do underground burials?
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I thought they do.
Go see it again.
This is such an interesting film. It is an excellent capper to, a solid 3-movie trilogy. It isn't Lord of the Rings grandeur masterpiece.
But it's a heck of a lot better than the Star Wars trilogy.
It's a heck of a lot better than Star Wars prequel trilogy by far. And I was very moved to tears with Bilbo's acting, Martin Freeman's acting, especially with Richard Armitage's big scene, his climactic tragic scene. I thought it was a great movie, and I'm very pleased. I was so happy that I was happy by the end of this movie. I was so happy that I was
happy that he was happy too.
And you know what? And I met some other fans. You know what they said? They said, "Oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting it would be this good." After last year's movie, there was quite a few fans.
That's the best.
They said didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the best endorsement. That's the best endorsement.
What's your final call? Do you think this has a chance for winning an Oscar? In what categories?
It will have a best chance to win an Oscar, perhaps in some of the technical categories, sound editing, and visual effects, and hopefully, and my heart is out for you, Billy Boyd, I want you to get an Oscar, a nomination at least, but I want you to get that Oscar for Best Song.
I think he might get the Oscar for Best Song.
It was right here on this show, on Torn Tuesday, that we put out the idea originally that Billy Boyd should do, the song, since he was in his band Beefcake. So let's put it out there right now. Oscar, are you listening? Academy Awards voters, are you listening? Billy Boyd's song, The Last Goodbye. Bring it.
So we think there's going to be at least 3 or 4 Oscar nominations. I really think that Billy has the best chance to win this year for Best Song. And then The Hobbit brings home gold to our Oscar party, which will be here in Hollywood. Find us in Indiegogo. One last party on Indiegogo. We've only got a week left. And we want to throw a really great party. But thank you for joining us. This is everything that has been right with the Battle of Five Armies. Look for future episodes where we discuss the other aspects that maybe hardcore fans might have taken issues with in everything not good with the Battle of Five Armies.
One episode is everything right with the movie. Another episode will be everything critically wrong with the movie. But in this sense, we had a lot more right. A hell of a lot more.
There's way more right.
Way more right with this than there was wrong.
I'm Justin. That's Cliff.
And you can follow me on Twitter at QuickBeam2000. Follow him at Justin's Big Idea. And please, pay attention to everything TheOneRing.net is doing at TheOneRing.net.
We have amazing exclusive. We're about to publish a one-on-one interview from his house with Ian McKellen, where he goes into talk about who he thinks would have made a great Gandalf had he not taken the role.
Oh, and before we close, the best thing that was right, I think, with Battle of the Five Armies was the very, very ending where they bring it right back to flash forward with Ian Holm as old Bilbo. And he says, "No, thank you. We don't want any more relatives, well-wishers today." And Gandalf says in the background, "What about very old friends?"
Perfect.
It was such a great ending.
Love it.
Loved that. And
lots to be right about this movie.
Yeah.
Join us every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific at TheOneRing.net/live. And we'll do this again. Next week, we'll have the Hillywood Show on and get their reaction
Hillywood sisters
to the film and talk about their new amazing parody. Look for the Hillywood Show's parody Frozen.
Yes.
Let it go.
The Frozen parody of all Frozen parodies.
Amazing.
Because it's the Lord of the Rings parody. How about that? You guys have been with us another great year. Thank you for 2014. Thank you for all of our convention appearances and all the fans supporting us at all of our events and picnics and everything. Subtext, we love you. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, best of holidays and Kwanzaa, and all your lights festivals and your end of year Yule log burning. It's the best time of year. Be with the ones you love. Be safe and be sound. And thank you, Sony, for not backing down and actually showing the interview. Thank you.
I'm still going to go see Hobbit instead on Christmas Day.
I'm going to go see Tim Burton's new movie, Big Eyes. Ooh, That's what I want to go see. Looking forward to that.
I'm still going to go see Hobbit first. We'll see you next time.
Good night, everybody.